there's a lot of talk about leadership today, and it's honestly in the spirit of the season, really. Sacrificing leadership, setting the right examples, love, and all of that. So we're continuing in that trajectory, honestly, still in the spirit of the season, and we're focusing on transparency in governance, trickling down from the federal to the state level. And as you've seen, we're joined by Dr. Otive Igbuzo, who is founding executive director, African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development Center. That's the LSD. He joins us virtually on the program this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to join you this morning.
Right, and now we're having this conversation on the back of the Nigerian State's Budget Transparency Survey 2022, which showed very, very interesting outcomes across states, just how well states are transparent when it comes to their budgetary process. I remember reading a book by former Minister of Finance of Nigeria, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and she sort of was saying that one of her biggest headaches was the budgetary process, having to take, the document to the National Assembly. I mean, she really dwelt on that, how much of a headache it was usually. They will set parameters, it will be changed, different things will be snuck in, and it just got me thinking, if that is happening at the federal level, just how much will be happening at the states, 36 states of the Federation. You've done extensive work on all of this, and I'd like you to speak to just how far we have come, if we have come that far anyway, in terms of transparency, accountability in the budgetary process. I know you've also worked in the National Assembly as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. The point is that budget is very important for any country or state because it is through budgetary provisions that services are delivered to citizens. And the budget process as important as the content. And the work that you talked about looked at three main parameters. First is the availability of the budget documents to the public. And second is participation of citizens and the public in the budgetary process. And then the third is the procurement process that is used in these states. Now, the work was actually done, the survey was done by and what was found only a slight improvement from the survey that was done 2 years ago. Like you said, our general observation is that at the federal level, it appears to be more robust, more issues of transparency and accountability than at the sub-national levels in the 36 states of the Federation. And our argument has been that all over the world, in order to promote transparency and accountability in governance, there are 4 key things that needs to be done. First is the government agency that is making the procurement or the expenses must put in place internal procedures and measures for transparency and accountability, including financial letters, financial procedures, and procurement processes. Second, the parliament should have oversight over the entire budgetary process and expenses. And thirdly, citizens and the media should have oversight and monitoring across the entire spectrum. And then finally, independent institutions like the ICPC and the EFCC should be able to ensure that there's transparency and accountability. The challenge we have in Nigeria is that these 4 categories of people are not doing the work to the optimum. That is why we have a level of opacity and lack of transparency and accountability and the high level of corruption that we see in the country. And it appears that these 4 issues I talked about, these 4 institutions, these 4 categories of people are also more active at the federal level than the state level. That is why in many states of the Federation, they don't even talk about corruption. They don't have any mechanism for dealing with corruption. They don't raise the issues. They don't bring officers from state level who are corrupt. We only hear about corruption in the state when EFCC or ICPC is pursuing somebody. But if you look at it, you discover that many states of the Federation are more than 50 small countries across the world. There are countries across the world that have less than a population of less than 1 million. And certainly, more than 50 countries across the world have population now less than 4 million. And many states in this country have population more than 4 million. So a state can even operate as if it's a country. That is the challenge we have of transparency and accountability at the subnational level.
You know, that report, or the survey, I should say, it was done by the Civil Resource Development and Documentation Center. It focuses on budgeting. I know the PLSI, which is another civil society organization, does work on audit efficacy as well. And they're all linked together, literally. And the trend we've seen time and again is that there are lots of things happening at the state level. And if you could just look at the outcome of the survey, you see that only one state actually performed very well, got a score of A, which is 84. And that is Jigawa State. And, you know, looking through, you see states like Rivers. Rivers is at the very bottom with 16. That's literally the least in terms of, you know, budget transparency. Niger State, Benue State, Nasarawa, those are the least or at the bottom 4. I wonder, these are states you would expect that at least, I mean, they will do quite well, especially because they get a lot of money. River State, for example, gets a lot from oil. So what is behind all of this? How is it that this goes on year after year and looks like no one bats an eyelid?
I don't think that it is completely true that no one is batting an eyelid. People are raising issues. If you go to the media, people are raising issues about the need for transparency and accountability. And like I said earlier, why you have this happening in those states is because of the kind of leadership in those states. They do not prioritize transparency and accountability. You know, many of the states, and it's also because there's no consequence. There's no consequence. If, for instance, a leader or a governor in a particular state, this survey comes and that leader has the lowest, and the people in the state are outraged, and in the next election, they vote the person out, you will see that everybody will struggle. So why this is so is because, you know, in those states, they are not prioritizing transparency and accountability. So government agencies and institutions are not abiding by financial circulars. In fact, at the top level, many of them, you can see a governor can visit a site and say, look, this place is bad. Okay, I will give you road. And the following day, say, look, it's Julius, even before the time he says Julius Berger who will do this road. And then you call Julius Berger and you pay. So when those states are challenged at first, they don't have processes. And secondly, the civil society, citizens, and the media are not doing enough monitoring. In some of the states, the media have been captured, you know, so they just merely parrot whatever the state is. So there is no critical engagement with the state. And then the parliament are not asking the right questions. You know, part of the problem is that in many of the states, the governors decide who goes to the House of Assembly, and so and even decide the leadership, you know. So the legislature that is supposed to do the oversight is not doing the necessary oversight. And you know that even ICPC and EFCC are now having challenges doing engaging with corruptible transactions in state. You know, there are examples in the past where EFCC arrested some people in the state and then the state's government will come out and say, our money is not missing. So what is your problem? So all of these are good environment for lack of transparency and accountability. And that is why you see that kind of report that we've seen. And the solution is really that we need a whole of society approach to dealing with corruption and to dealing with issues of transparency and accountability, which will involve everyone, citizens, media, government institutions, parliament, and then independent institutions that are set up. In fact, we should actually begin to advocate for states to have their own, if they claim coordinate powers as a federal state, you know, they should be able to have their own anti-corruption institutions that we deal, because one of the ways of dealing with corruption is discussing it. But, well, like I said earlier, in the state, there are no discussions. It's not an issue. It's not raised. So if you have anti-corruption commissions within the state, then the issue of corruption will be on the table. And if they are manned by seasoned people who are committed and passionate to public service, then you begin to see some improvement in those states that have performed very poorly.
Mr. Stevie, let's discuss it further and see if we can get a bit more insight. And your organization has provided a very, clear report, as the case may be. Apart from the observation made by my colleague Kaide earlier that some states surprisingly are at the bottom, and the others, which would have expected to be opaque in terms of transparency, are actually at the top. I'm looking at Jigawa now. Jigawa actually scores high, 84%, and just after Jigawa, you have Kano that has 64%. So there really is only one state that scores that high. But talk to us about, this pictorial where you have 81 for providing extensive information, and it's categorized in green, 61 to 80, also categorized in a lighter shade of green, providing significant information, and we find yellow providing some information, and then red, that's at the bottom, providing scant or no information. So what information specifically are they making readily available, and what information are they withholding that categorizes them as highly transparent or opaque, providing no information at all?
Thank you very much. This study is actually at the basic of transparency and accountability, because one of the basic tenets of transparency is access to information. So access to information regarding budget. So in this study, we looked at 10 basic information that is made available and publicly available. So it's not information that you put on your shelf, information that you put on your website or it's published and other people can access it. They include, for instance, the budgetary proposal that was sent by the state government to the House of Assembly. They include the final approved appropriation act for the budget. They include what we call citizens' budget, whether it was summarized into a document that citizens can easily understand. They include quarterly report of the performance of the budget, whether it's available. They include annual report of the budget. They include the audit report that is produced by the Auditor General of the state, and they include the Accountant General's report. So these are just basic that under normal circumstances, if you have nothing to hide, and in terms of modern governance, that state governments should be able to make available to the public. But for many of the states, it's not available. So for where you have all of them available, that's where you have that categorization. Then some have a few available, and you have the second categorization, and then the third categorization. So these are the basic documents that we are talking about. When they are available, then they are categorized according to those levels.
Also, you mentioned the Auditor General's report, which is key to, government spending, public expenditure, and accounts. And some states have begun to, legislate for independence of the independence and autonomy of the Office of the State Auditors General. But how significant is this, even in the light of the fact that the independence granted the Office of the Auditor General most of the time is just on paper, but they're not independent enough to look at the books of the spendings of the executives?
I think you have captured it very clearly and correctly. The Office of the Auditor General is key, is crucial in terms of transparency and accountability in the running of governance. And the World Bank provided some incentives and facility shifters to various states. And we think that that is why many of the state governments have now put audit laws. And that is one of our reflections, because some of the level of improvement that we see in the past 2 years, some people have alluded to the fact that it's because of that incentive. So, because this survey is done every 2 years, we are looking forward to the next 2 years where there will be where this facility from World Bank will not be there to see whether we will see improvement. But you are very correct about the difference between law and practice. Many of the states have put the audit law in place, and the audit law, one of the major provisions is that the Office of the Auditor General will get their budgetary approvals from the consolidated revenue line. But from interactions, it's not all of them that, are implementing it according to the letter.
Right.
But you will also know that it's not unusual in this country.
Okay.
I'm sure you will recall that the Procurement Act at the national level was put into law in 2007.
Well, clearly, Dr. Egbuzo, this is a conversation that really might be endless at this rate, but you've provided very important insights, and I do hope that they'll be taken into consideration on the back of that survey, which doesn't look good at all for the states. But we'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Otive Egbuzo, the founding executive director, Africa Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
It's my pleasure.
Well, that's the package for today. It's a holiday, so I know you have a lot to do, so make this day a great one. Don't indulge too much, all right? And don't forget the ones that do not have. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Well, even if you indulged just a little bit, but don't forget the message of the season, which is to sacrifice for the greater good. Thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Koka.
Yes, indeed. We also got your feedback, Professor Nakena, Honorable Ademola Alalade, and Festus Akimboyewa, who's wishing everyone Baraka Eid al-Adha to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Neo Taigwe. Bye-bye.